welcome back to Omoshiroi Recap. Today, I will recap the Aristocrat's Otherworldly adventure. It tells the story of a lonely, poor young boy named Shiina Kazuya. He comes across a knife-wielding thug threatening some girls. Kazuya tackled him to the ground, but he was stabbed and eventually died. Then, he came back to life in another world as a nobleman's son named Cain. When he woke up, Cain was in a luxurious room, but when he looked in the mirror, he was surprised because his body turned into a small child. Besides that, he was also accompanied by people he didn't know, even though it was his mother and servants who took care of him. He could confirm that he died and moved to another world. Because he had previously been a teenager, he had a little difficulty in carrying out his daily life. Then, when he was told that in that world, there was magic, Cain became eager to master it immediately. Previously, Cain was a high school student, so he knew letters and was good at counting. His parents were very proud of him. They thought maybe their son was a genius child. Since then, Cain studied with his older sister, Reincarnated, while practicing magic secretly. Cain was already 5 years old, and at the age of 5, he had to do a baptism to get his power status. When he was in front of the 7 god statues, an unexpected event occurred. The statue suddenly glowed and brought his consciousness to God's realm. In his subconscious, Cain met with the 7 gods, and they explained that his death was unexpected. Actually, without even putting up a fight, the villain would stumble and be detained by the surrounding people. But because he died for the sake of goodness, the god of the earth asked the god of reincarnation to bring him back to life. The god of magic gave a blessing so that his magic skills increased rapidly. The other gods also did the same so that the status of cloth skills was at the maximum level. After the baptism, Cain had a bad feeling. Then he looked at his status, and it turned out that he received the blessings of the 7 gods, and his level surpassed everyone's highest level. In addition, he also can create magic. With the magic, he could keep his true status secret from people. But because the amount of blessings was not like normal people, his father forbade him to show his status to anyone. When Cain returned to his room, he found a magic book for summoning. Hoping to summon cute animals, he tried the magic, but what was summoned was a terrible demon. Because the monster wanted to attack his older sister to protect them, Cain immediately cancelled the summoning magic. Then, because he couldn't be his father's successor, Cain decided to become an adventurer. He said that to people during his birthday celebration. To become an adventurer, Cain had to practice a lot so his father would find a teacher to accompany him during his training. Cain was looking forward to it. He imagined that it would be a muscular man or a great wizard, but it turned out to be a beautiful adventurer. Millie and Nina are D-rated adventurers who will train Cain for 3 years. During the first training, Millie was immediately surprised by Cain's sword skills, even though he was only 5 years old. Millie was already overwhelmed when sparring with him. Nina was also surprised by him. She did not expect that Cain mastered all the elements and did not even use a chant. This made Millie and Nina think there was nothing more they could teach. They decided to practice outside because if it continued like this, the palace would be destroyed. After getting permission from his father, they went to an area far from the settlement. There, Cain was asked to destroy the target by using intermediate magic. Cain tried to follow his teacher's words, but the magic issued instead passed the intermediate level magic. Then Millie and Nina realized that a monster was approaching. It was the first time Cain had seen it, but he could immediately defeat it with just one attack. Millie and Nina were no longer surprised by the results. Since there was still plenty of time, they decided to continue hunting. Thanks to Millie and Nina, Cain was able to gain new experiences. The next day, they went to visit the guild to look for information about more powerful monsters. Suddenly, some adventurers were looking for trouble with them. The adventurers played tricks on Millie and Nina because their rank was lower than theirs. Cain immediately stopped his actions by using martial arts. The adventurer dared to pull out his sword even though his opponent was only a child. Even so, Cain was still invincible as he could easily dodge each attack and then counter with a stronger punch. Nina thanked Cain for protecting her. After 3 years of training, their contract as teachers was now over. As thanks for doing a good job, Cain wanted to prepare a gift. Cain collected materials that came from monsters, and he secretly entered the forest area to hunt down the strongest monsters that were there. His actions made the soldiers think that there was a monster on the rampage. Still, after the troops were mobilized, they found nothing but a handkerchief with a noble family crest. The next day, Cain gave the magic bag to his 2 teachers. This made them very surprised because the magic bag was equivalent to a national treasure. Because their work was finished, Cain was declared a graduate. Before parting, Millie and Nina kissed his cheek. They thanked Cain while saying they would definitely come if Cain needed help in the future. When he was 10 years old, Cain and his entourage went to the capital. This time, he would attend a special mandatory event for noble sons. Far ahead of them, there was a group of horse-drawn carriages that were attacked by monsters. With his detection magic, Cain immediately realized the attack. Therefore, he immediately jumped from the horse-drawn carriage and then used wind magic to accelerate his movement. Not long after that, Cain arrived at the location of the attack. When he got there, he immediately helped the knights, who protected the horse-drawn carriage with his magic abilities. One by one, the monsters could be defeated. Cain also used his swordsmanship to finish off all the enemies. After defeating the enemy, Cain healed the knights who were injured. He was also willing to carry the fallen with his magic bag. Princess Telestia and noble Princess Silk got out of the carriage and thanked Cain's father for helping them. When Cain introduced himself, Telestia and Silk approached him and thanked him too. They were impressed by Cain's prowess, so Cain was fought over and forced to accompany them for security reasons. Besides that, Telestia and Silk also seemed to like him so much that they couldn't stay away from Cain and always held his hand throughout the journey. They both also forced him to stay in the same room, while Cain could not refuse and was forced to comply with all their wishes. A few days later, they arrived at the capital. The vice commander of the knights approached him and thanked him for protecting them. The knight also conveyed the message that Cain must immediately meet the king. Upon arrival at the palace, the royal party announced that Cain had saved the princess from the monster attack and eradicated 30 monsters alone. He also healed the wounded and brought the fallen knights to the capital. For this achievement, the king rewarded the title of nobility, silver coins, and a mansion. Although there were nobles who opposed the decision, they could not cancel it because the king himself decided it. After that, Cain was asked by the king to meet him in the guest room. They had a very important discussion. The king asked Cain if he wanted to marry Princess Telestia and also the noble Princess Silk. The official marriage, of course, had to wait for them to grow up. For now, they could get engaged first. Because Telestia and Silk already really liked it, Cain could not refuse the engagement. Cain met again with the gods. This time, he consulted his status, which was already equivalent to a demigod. Because in that world, there was no entertainment, the gods suggested that he create a game from his past knowledge. Coincidentally, Cain had an acquaintance with a girl named Parma. Cain went to Parma to make a trade contract with her father. In the contract, Cain asked Parma's father for help to make Reversi a strategy board game for 2 players. After seeing the rules and how to play, Parma's father thought that the strategy board game would sell well. Therefore, as the head of the company, he would try his best. It didn't take long for Parma's father to succeed in creating the Reversi ordered by Cain. The results were as expected. Cain asked that 2 versions be made, one for ordinary people and the other for nobles and rich merchants. Cain also gave a lot of gold coins so that the plan could be carried out. After that, they offered their game to the god of commerce so that for the next 3 years, no one would be able to copy the product they had created. After completing his business affairs, Cain immediately made preparations to join the noble gathering. In the event, he met the nobles along with their children. Silk's noble daughter also attended the event. Silk looked beautiful until she made Cain think she was a princess from another country. Instantly, Silk was very happy to get praise from Cain. After that, Cain went to the king to greet each other. Cain was still 10 years old, but his ability to seduce was so extraordinary that it made Princess Telestia become enamored with him. Cain also used the opportunity to introduce his new product. When Cain was talking alone with Silk, several noble children tried to disturb him. Cain introduced himself to them, but they misunderstood and assumed that Cain was a lower-level nobleman. They challenged Cain in a magical battle, but the magic attacks issued by them were too weak. Fed up with their silliness, Silk explained her misunderstanding that Cain was the one who had saved her and received the title of noble. After knowing this, the children immediately apologized and immediately left him. The strategy board game created by Cain became a popular game for the royal family. They liked it so much that they were addicted to playing it. Now, Cain already has his own mansion, but the mansion given by the king is a dilapidated house that has not been used for a long time. The condition is very dirty and uninhabitable, but fortunately, he has the magic to clean all the rooms. In addition, he can also repair damaged objects by using his magic so that the mansion becomes clean like a new mansion. After all the rooms were cleaned, Cain called the servants in his father's mansion special servants for him. Sylvia was very happy when asked to be a special servant for Cain. Still, since the mansion was already clean, they would prepare to receive his moving goods. Cain, meanwhile, had to go to his father's mansion as soon as his older siblings returned home. Jin and Alec were the first children and the second child, respectively. Even though Cain had preceded them to become nobles, they were still friendly and proud of their brother. Then, Cain also displayed the preserved dragon body in his house. This, of course, made a commotion because the dragon was a disaster-class monster. After getting the mansion, every noble must hold a party and invite other nobles. Sylvia suggested that Cain could prepare unique gifts and dishes that only he could think of. The idea turned out to run smoothly, and the guests really liked the unique food and drinks made by him. In addition, Cain had also prepared quality glasses for all the guests who came. The king also attended the party held by Cain. The king really liked the party, from the dishes to all the other services. Amazed him so that Cain was given the best praise. Not long after that, a nobleman who did not like Cain came to attend his party. Despite his annoying nature, Cain still served him as well as possible. At the same time, other nobles began to talk about his arrogance for arriving late. He even demonized the dishes and services that had been provided. But when Cain was about to give him a gift to bring him to the king, the nobleman did not expect the king to be present at his party, so he immediately felt ashamed and no longer dared to do anything to Cain. A few days later, Cain was asked by the deputy commander of the Royal Knights to put monster materials in the palace warehouse. But the warehouse was not enough to store everything. He needed a field area because the capture was an earth dragon. This made the deputy commander of the knights very surprised. Then, Cain was forced to join training with all the knights. At first, they refused to fight a child like him. Still, after Cain showed his abilities, they did not hesitate to attack him simultaneously. That's when the knight commander named Tefana approached him. She stopped the fight because she thought Cain was being bullied. The deputy commander explained that Cain was a hero who had saved the princess. Knowing this, the commander immediately opposed Cain's duel with her. Cain was attacked by using a real sword, while he only used a wooden sword. Even though he only used a wooden sword, his sword skills could keep up with the knight commander. His movement speed was also much faster than before, and in the end, Cain won the duel. But something went wrong with Tefana, and she decided to marry Cain. Cain refused her proposal as much as possible, but Tefana kept insisting. Actually, Tefana is the princess of the upper-class nobility and the princess of the elven country. Because she comes from the elven race, Tefana doesn't care much about age. She can live for 300 years without affecting her appearance. Then suddenly, Cain was again summoned by the king, and they showed him the emperor-level magic book written by the first king. So far, no one could read it, but Cain could understand the writing because it was written in Japanese. Cain could no longer make excuses or lie to the king. In the end, Cain decided to tell the truth, but the condition was that he wanted everyone to keep it a secret. Otherwise, he had to leave the kingdom. Then Cain said he had memories from his previous life. Besides that, he had also met all the gods and received blessings from them. In other words, Cain was the reincarnation of the god's choice. After listening to him, the king felt he had to treat him as a saint. He was also willing to give up the throne so that Cain became king. But Cain refused all that. He just wanted to live a free life like an ordinary person. The next day was his 12th birthday, and Cain was finally old enough to register as an adventurer. He went straight to the guild, and the officer introduced herself as Lesha. Lesha told him to fill out the form while she was filling it out. Cain decided to use the name Cain instead and hide his noble status. After all the forms were filled out, Cain got his adventurer card and started at G rank. Suddenly, some adventurers interrupted and told Cain to go back to his mother while trying to kick him. But Cain easily dodged their attacks and fooled them. The man prepared to draw his sword, but everything stopped when a red-haired adventurer appeared, so the men ran away instead. The red-haired adventurer was named Claude from the Ice Fire Party. Seeing the way he dodged the attack from the previous man, Claude was sure that Cain was very strong. Then Claude reveals that the name of his party is the Ice Fire Party, where he fights with a flaming sword, and his wife uses ice magic. Claude is suddenly hit when his wife Lena suddenly appears. Lena dragged Claude away, saying that they should continue their quest. Cain checked the quest board and found the mission to defeat the goblins. He thought it was the perfect first mission for him, but he suddenly met Tefana. Tefana decided to go with him to accompany Cain on his first mission as an adventurer. They headed into the forest, and Tefana enjoyed her time with him. Cain used his search skills to detect goblins, and they saw a man surrounded by goblins. Tefana charged towards the goblins, easily cutting them down. But suddenly, a green lizard appeared. Cain used his light spell to blind them and then followed up with his ice pillar. Cain reported to the guild, and Lesha was surprised to hear it because green lizards are usually C-rank quests. Even an officer there didn't believe it and accused Cain of trying to cheat. Then came the guild leader, who was Tefana's older brother. The guild leader mentioned that Cain was a noble and a hero who saved the princess. So the matter was finally settled, and the guild leader decided to promote him to a rank. But Cain needed to subdue some bandits. The day of the academy entrance exam had arrived, and Cain used a teleportation spell to get to the academy. He checked in for the exam and was given directions to the exam room. While there, he felt strange not recognizing anyone and wondered if Telestia and Silk were taking the exam elsewhere. The exam started, and it was just math skills and was very easy for Cain. After the written exam was over, they continued with the magic assessment, which excited Cain. A boy started chanting spells and making fireballs, but it was so weak that Cain realized that this was the level that most 12-year-olds had. When Cain's turn came, my boy, Cain, was cooking in this scene. The fire bullet spell caused a huge explosion that went through the wall. Cain was confused as he had only used beginner-level spells. They proceeded to the swordsmanship exam, and a teacher introduced some of Claude's rank adventurers. Knowing Cain was taking the academy exam, Claude wanted to be his opponent. Cain thought that Claude was quite strong. Therefore, he used his enhancement skills and started attacking. The other kids couldn't believe how fast they were moving. The teacher there told them to stop because they had scared the other kids. The teacher said he had seen enough and told Cain to go home and wait for the results. A few days later, the king scolded Cain about the damage caused and explained that Cain had taken the wrong test. It turned out that the previous testing ground was an exam for commoners. Despite this, Cain was still accepted into the academy with a perfect score and ranked first. On the day of the acceptance ceremony, Cain saw his parents coming to watch him, and Telestia and Silk joined him. Cain gave his speech, and he hoped to make friends with everyone regardless of social status. Afterwards, the homeroom teacher told them to think about their future. Cain chose to be a noble and an adventurer. In contrast, his girls chose internal affairs and business so that they could help him manage the territory in the future. During recess, Cain met Parma. Of course, Telestia and Silk felt jealous and told Cain to kneel while they chatted with Parma. Suddenly, Cain heard a voice telling him to visit the library. When Cain opened the door, it led to another room, and he was teleported to a room where he met a man. The man introduced himself as Yuuya, or the first king 300 years ago. Cain was surprised and thought he was a ghost. After Cain checked his status, it turned out that he had the title of Creator God. Yuuya explained that in the other world he created, he was considered a god and maintained his appearance even after 300 years. Yuuya said that the gods asked him to train Cain to be even stronger because one day, Cain would face an evil god named Eren. They suddenly teleported to the beach and gave him a sword. Cain was asked to complete his training in the forest and reach at least level 600. Now, Cain's level was 300, so it would take a long time to reach level 600. Upon entering the forest, he was immediately attacked by various deadly monsters. Cain had spent months in the forest and felt that he could not return. Suddenly, he heard a cry coming from a wounded animal. Cain forced himself to use all the healing magic he had to heal the beast until it fainted. The beast protected Cain from other monsters, realizing that Cain wanted to make it his partner and was named Haku. So they defeated various monsters together and made it to Yuuya's house after 4 years had passed. Yuuya was surprised to see Haku because he was a sacred beast. Then Yuuya introduces his next teacher, Doran. Doran will train Cain to become stronger than the two of them. Before continuing the training, Yuuya explained that Eren is the god of entertainment, but he uses his power to force everyone to join the game of death. At that time, Yuuya and his partner managed to seal Eren. It turned out that Yuuya's colleagues were Cain's parents. The three of them were called heroes and given the task by the gods to stop Eren. Cain's mother launched Inferno magic, but it didn't work and instead made her get a fatal attack from Eren. Seeing that his father Cain used his ultimate skill, he ended up getting stabbed. Still, Yuuya took the opportunity and managed to seal Eren. After learning about his parents and Eren, Cain tried hard to train with Doran. Cain always practiced every day until he fainted, but when he returned home, Doran's wife prepared delicious food for them. After 1 year passed, Cain managed to defeat Doran and finally completed his training. After that, Cain visited his parents' funeral. At the same time, Doran allowed Cain to make a contract with his dragon named Jin. Before Cain returned to his home world, Yuya threw him a katana and told him to give it to the king. Although Cain trained for 5 years, it turns out that 1 year in Yuya's world is equal to only 1 day in his world. So Cain disappeared for 5 days and made his girls worry about him. They welcomed him home, and Cain was happy to have them in his life. When Cain left, the guild was looking for him because he hadn't taken any missions since he became a ranked, so they might have to cancel the registration. Cain immediately headed to the guild and met with the guild master. He informed him that he needed to subdue some bandits, and there were about 10 bandits in the group. Cain immediately accepted and teleported while using flying magic, so he could see the bandits trying to rob the train. Cain was surprised because he met Millie and Nina there. Seeing Millie injured, Cain immediately healed her. The bandits thought he was just a child and underestimated him. But Cain made them pay for Millie's injury and easily defeated them all, barely touching them. Millie wondered why Cain suddenly appeared. Cain explained that he got the Conquest Quest and showed the gold card of an A-rank adventurer. Millie and Nina couldn't believe that Cain could pass the C and B ranks. The bandits were finally brought back to the city in a cage, and Cain and the others stopped by the guild. Claude was surprised to see Cain with Millie. It turned out that Millie was actually his younger sister. They also celebrated the meeting by drinking together and telling stories about the greatness of Cain, who had defeated the Red Dragon, an SS rank monster. Even the girls showed off their magic bags made by Cain. Knowing this, Lena also begged Cain to make her a magic bag. Meanwhile, in a distant cave, Aaron's shard was picked up by a goblin and then swallowed by a dragon. The dragon became possessed, and Aaron took over his body and realized that the seal on him had weakened. So, he intended to take revenge on the other gods. At the academy, Cain was learning about summoning magic. A teacher handed out magic circle papers to the students. The students began to summon all kinds of different creatures and make contracts with them. But there was a student who couldn't make a contract because the creature was stronger than him, so he disappeared. Now it was Cain's turn to try summoning magic. My boy showed that he was on a different level than the other students. He accidentally summoned a demon king named Seth and made the demon king submit to him. He was happy to be able to make a contract with the messenger of God and was ready to destroy the entire nation. But Cain had no intention of destroying anything. Seth said that Cain could summon him at any time. After completing the contract, Seth disappeared from there. The teacher who saw the incident reported it to the king. The king interrogated Cain, and he was forced to say everything that he called the Demon King, which caused them all to panic. The king also asked Cain to show his status window. They were all surprised to see that Cain had the title of Divine Messenger. Even the king was willing to hand over his throne to Cain. But Cain refused. Instead, the king decided to promote him to Viscount and gave him a city. If Cain managed to manage the town well, then the king decided to publicly announce his engagement to the princess. Then, his brother told him that there was a huge increase in the number of monsters in the forest, so he sends high-level adventurers to check it out. Cain, along with Millie and Nina, were also there. Cain asked them to stand guard around the town and wait for Claude's arrival with Lena. While Cain was alone entering the forest, he encountered many powerful monsters, even felt something strange there. So Cain called Seth to investigate the forest. Seth also asked Dalmatia, the former 4 great lords, to investigate the forest. When they managed to break through the deepest forest, they found a terrible figure there. Aaron, who sensed their presence, ordered the monsters to create chaos. Seeing this, Seth immediately teleported to meet Cain in the city. He told him that the monsters had attacked. Cain asked his friends to join the army of knights led by Tefana to protect the city from monster attacks. Meanwhile, Cain and Seth intend to face the mastermind of it all, Aaron. Seth told him to keep going while he and the 4 great lords dealt with the monsters. Meanwhile, Tefana organized the defense, and Nina detected a lot of monsters. They decided to go to the forest to fight the monsters. Seth ordered them all to defeat as many monsters as they could, and the rest would be taken care of by the adventurers. Claude and Millie confront the monsters while Nina and Lena help them with magic. On the other hand, Cain was suddenly attacked by black fire, but Cain managed to fend it off with his spell. Cain also realized that the black dragon was Eren. Cain called Haku and Jin to fight him. Even though Cain had cast high-level magic, nothing worked. Even Haku and Jin were seriously injured by Eren's attack. At the last moment, Cain managed to protect them by deflecting the attack. He also activated his father's ultimate skill and cast Emperor-level magic. Their powers clashed until there was a huge light that everyone saw from a distance. Without realizing that Cain had annihilated the black dragon until there was nothing left, Seth and Dalmatia told him that he had overused his power. The battle was over, and all the monsters had retreated to the forest, so the city was safe. Cain celebrated with his friends. A few days later, the king promoted Cain to Viscount and was given a territory to manage. But the territory was very troubled. Even so, Cain thought it would be fun to build a new city there. Cain headed to the territory and was confronted by adventurers, but Cain beat them all. He also captured the criminals who were there and fought the hitmen. Not only that, Cain also made a castle that was more luxurious than the king's castle, so they told him that he had gone too far. But that's where this video ends, so remember to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.